Postcards from a Dying World, the podcast. For more than a decade, I've reviewed over 1,000 books that are mostly science fiction, horror, and bizarro. This feed will feature bonus audio I have produced over the years, as well as a monthly digest of reviews based on what I've read each month, plus the occasional bonus material about my own fiction. Thanks for listening. Welcome to Postcards from a Dying World, a special bonus episode. I'm here representing my man Sammy Terry to talk about horror movies. But what we're going to talk about is classic horror novels that should be made into horror movies, TV series, or, anything, basically a Hollywood production. I'm David Agranoff here of Postcards from a Dying World. And, there's been some really exciting things happening with modern horror. We've got Paul Tremblay and Josh Malerman. Like, well, Paul Tremblay's got Cabin at the End of the World, which is my favorite of his novels. It's going to be a movie soon called Knock at the Cabin by M. Night Shyamalan. Of course, we've already seen Josh Malerman's Bird Box and Tim Lebbon's The Silence, Sarah Pinbrough, Behind Her Eyes. These are all modern horror things. So, I think modern horror is covered in a lot of ways, but what I'd like to see is some classic works of horror fiction that might have been overlooked get the movie treatment. So these are 10 projects that if Hollywood tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, David, what do you want to do to make a horror movie based on a classic work? You can adapt anything you want. What would you do? And I'm going to start with number 10, Corota by Owl Going Back. This is a really great novel and a classic work that could really, it's a Bram Stoker award-winning novel that might come across as just another monster novel, but Owl Going Back is a trailblazing Native American horror author who really delivers not only readable page turners, but something that, comes very noticeably from a different culture. And Corota starts as a murder mystery, and its monster and mythology stuff is all really, really well written, and it comes off with a real campfire feel to it. It's really good stuff. It's been adapted into a graphic novel before, and there's audiobooks out there. You can get into this book in many, many ways, but I really feel like you could make a really great movie of Corota without like breaking the bank on budget. So yeah, number 10, Corota. So number 9 is Earthworm Gods, aka The Conqueror Worms by Brian Keene. So listeners of my podcast, Brian, and because he's recently been on, he was on our Who Goes There episode panel on the adaptation or the story that inspired the thing. So Earthworm Gods, this would take a little bit more of a budget than our number 10, but it's based on an early novel by Grandmaster of Horror, Brian Keene. It starts with rain, biblical pounding rain. I'm talking serious rain. So this novel is it's very cosmic horror in one sense. And well, Brian is known for kind of reinvigorating the zombie genre with The Rising. I think Earthworm Gods is one of his best horror concepts, although I did like Darkness on the Edge of Town as well, as far as just a concept goes. And I'm a big fan of Keene's Lost Level books. But this one, I feel like, has the ability to do for serious rain what Psycho did for showers and freaking people out about that. So yeah, Brian Keene's The Earthworm Gods, very good stuff. So number 8 is a short story, and it's one of 2 short stories, not a novel that we have on the list. Number 8 is Styx by Carl Edward Wagner. Published in Whispers the Year I Was Born. Styx is one of the all-timer horror short stories. One problem is that people will think that you are jacking you are ripping off the style of True Detective by making this, but no, this That whole stick figure imagery thing basically was taken from this story. The story combines a country gothic haunted house theme with a light Cthulhu mythos and rolls it into a very scary package. Now, we talked about this story once before on the podcast in the top 10 horror short stories panel with Laird Barron, Mary Sangiovanni, and Judge Mark Rothenberg. So go back and listen to that episode. That's a long panel discussion, very different from this top 10 list, but I highly recommend that. And Styx is a must read. So definitely get on that. So number 7 has one of the greatest titles for a horror novel ever. I mean, seriously, it's a great title. So number 7, Choir of Ill Children by Tom Piccirilli. I have to admit, I'm not a huge Tom Pick reader, but Choir of Ill Children is just one of the greatest titles, and it's a really incredible novel. It's not like anything else that he ever wrote. It's not like anything anyone else ever wrote. It's just an uncomfortably bizarro Southern Gothic that is almost impossible to explain. I have a hard time believing anyone could make a faithful adaptation of Choir of Ill Children, but if anyone had the guts to produce an even semi-faithful take on this novel, I mean, we're daydreaming here with this list, so we might as well just go for it. But it would rule. You have psychic triplets, witches, freaks, crime. It's kind of impossible to explain what a crazy phantasmagoria this novel is. It's just crazy. So if you made like a David Lynchian style insanity, I mean, it would be incredible. And I dare anyone, I dare you to make Choir of Ill Children. And, hey, Dean Koontz blurbed it, so you'd have that. Number 6 is The Storm by David Morrell, a short story collected in Black Evening, his collection Black Evening. And this is a very different opposite side of the spectrum from the last one we talked about, because this is a very simple and subtle horror tale of creeping dread by David Morrell, the author of First Blood. Yep, Rambo's dad, as he calls himself. He is also the author of many super underrated novels, thrillers, horror novels, you name it. Testament, personal favorite of mine, his second novel. The Totem, Creepers, and Brotherhood of the Rose, to name a few. Just of my favorites. But I mean, he has two decades of consistent publishing thrillers and action books mostly, but really good stuff. The Totem is a great horror novel, for example. But the setup to this one is a simple family vacation, a station wagon trying to stay ahead of a very crazy storm, and then like some vibe and tone things happen. It's a great story. It could make a really intense, low budget direct streaming film. David Koepp would make the heck out of this. David Koepp, who wrote Stir of Echoes and Panic Room, who's really good at small contained spaces and making suspense and tension out of them. But as long as you cast well and you had all the actors like working on the tension and things, you could make a really cheap and good movie. And it's time to remind people that David Morrell is more than just Rambo. He has a long career of really awesome books. So yeah, number 6, The Storm by David Morrell. So for number 5, we have one from 1993, and that is Drawing Blood by Poppy Z. Bright. And there have been many attempts lately at LGBTQ horror. But how about a novelist who was doing it in the early 90s? And Drawing Blood is a gay haunted house novel that's about deep trauma. And while I personally prefer Poppy Z. Bright's Exquisite Corpse, their next novel, I'm not sure that the world was ready for a movie based on, or a movie that's like that transgressive. I mean, like Exquisite Corpse is extremely transgressive. So I don't think the world will ever be ready for a movie like that. But, there were a couple attempts to do Exquisite Corpse back in the day. Closer to a traditional horror novel, Drawing Blood yeah, would make an excellent horror movie and would introduce the world to an important voice in horror fiction, um, uh, uh, transgender author who you know wrote some really early classics and then kind of bowed out from writing horror fiction. But we got some really amazing work early on from Poppy Z. Bright. And so really good stuff. And I'd like to draw attention to the three Poppy Z. Bright novels, which are great. I might be cheating with this one, number 4, because it's the most recent of all the books. And so number 4 is House of Fallen Trees by Gina Rinaldi. And it had a beautiful Earthling press like hardcover, I believe. But anyways, House of Fallen Trees. Gina Rinaldi is more known for surrealist, bizarro fare like Wall of Kiss, Mother Puncher, and All Men Are Trash, which recently got banned from Facebook and got several people just for posting the title, got them kicked off Facebook. This novel is a traditional haunted house style story that takes advantage of the Pacific Northwest setting. It's kind of creepy and atmospheric, and I would love to introduce the wider world beyond the publishing underground to Gina Rinaldi, who's a writer just a writer and person I love very dearly. Gina is amazing, and she wrote an entire book about a woman falling in love with a wall, and it works. She wrote an environmental novel called Mother Puncher. I mean, Gina is the queen of zero fucks given in storytelling, and I would love to see a movie made based on her most accessible mainstream work. Now we're getting into the top 3. These are the ones that I would probably give a toe to adapt, to work on the screenplays of, to produce, to be involved with adapting. And that I can't really like all 3 of these are ones that I would really want to do, but this one, the Repairman Jack series by F. Paul Wilson. And when I say series, I mean I would like to be involved in doing them all. Now, this is a tough one rights wise because there's over 2 dozen novels involved in doing Repairman Jack. I mean, more than that because that's not counting multiple other series and trilogies that take place within the secret history of the world kind of universe. That includes the adversary cycle and other interconnected universe stuff. There's other trilogies, but I would like to just focus on the Repairman Jack series. And now these novels span Wilson's entire career, Dark Tower style, and it's even deeper than that. I mean, it's like it's really throughout his whole career. You're going to see connections in everything he writes to this world, and so it's pretty immense. So when you look at all this, you might be thinking, "Ooh, man, that's a tough pitch." But the short pitch is that the Repairman Jack books are like the equalizer with sci-fi, horror, monster, mythology, and more. The 10th book in this series, Harbingers, has one of my favorite twists in a hero's journey that I've ever read anywhere in anything or seen. It's just, it's a great twist, but how you get there, that's the issue. Now, I suggest a TV series. Now, these novels are pretty quick paced, but look at this. This is the first 3, the Tomb Legacies, and what was the third one? Well, anyways, I'm brain farting, but what I want to see a series do is do 3 of the Repairman Jack novels at a time. And as you see, like we can, it's going to end up conspiracies. That's the third one, conspiracies. But if you did 3 at a time over a season of TV, that just kind of like how Andor's just been doing it on Star Wars, like each novel gets a 3-episode arc kind of thing. It's that the structure is right there, and you could eventually make the whole series leading up to Night World where it all ends. That being said, let me clarify this pitch so Hollywood can understand. This is IP based on a New York Times best-selling series. that you can pitch as Equalizer with monsters, but you could also pitch it as Jack Reacher meets X-Files in the room. Like if you're in the room with investors or whatever, you can say Jack Reacher meets X-Files, and you're not really lying. It's kind of reductive, but because Repairman Jack is more than that, but it would work. And this show is like, or this series of books is ready for streaming obsession if it was updated and done right. And F. Paul Wilson is a plotting Yoda. He would be a great partner with anybody who is adapting this. A couple screenwriters have tried, including David Scow, and I believe Craig Spector tried, and maybe R.C. Matheson. I'm not sure. A lot of people have tried, but this is the time when we have prestige TV that you could really do a fantastic Repairman Jack, and I definitely want to see that. So number 3, Repairman Jack series. So here we are at number 2, and number 2 is a doozy. It was one of my favorites in the 90s. It still is a favorite of mine, and that is Brian Lumley's Necroscope. I think this would make an amazing TV series. Now, here's the thing. You have to do it, period. It's set in the 1980s Cold War, and the Cold War is a huge part of Necroscope, and it needs to be that way. It's a brutal spy drama, and imagine, what if the Cold War erupted into an arms race between spy agencies with assets who talk to the dead? And what if there was a battle behind the Iron Curtain fought with necromancers and vampires? And Brian Lumley wrote 15 or so of these books. And I'm not a fan of the extended series so much. It gets really sci-fi, and it's not that I'm opposed to that, because I'm more of a sci-fi guy, but it's just, I think the story got a little out there. But the first 3 books are unfuckwithable. And I think a series where you adapt each of the first 3 books into the first 3 seasons, that's just, it would, you could keep the budget down because you could film in Europe. And I know period is expensive, but at the same time, if you set a lot of it in Europe and you do it creatively and smartly, you can make this for quite a low budget. Many people have tried to adapt Necroscope. It was a graphic novel series for a while. There's some really good art out there for that graphic novel, so people can see that. And it's a very popular IP for many, many years. And if you get the casting right for Boris Draxioni, the KGB necromancer and vampire puppet, man, you could create one of the greatest on-screen villains. It would be really, really good stuff. So yeah, number 2, Necroscope by Brian Lumley. All right, so number 1 is not going to be much of a shocker. If you followed my writing on my blog, this is a book that I even wrote some of the bonus features for the ebook. The author is somebody I'm working on a biography about as a mentor or friend. And I've been on the record many times as saying that this is my favorite horror novel of all time. So number 1 is not a shocker, but it's Wet Bones by John Shirley. This is my favorite horror novel of all time, and it was written by a master storyteller in the zone as he fought to recover from drug addiction. So this is an angry, defiant piece of just intense horror that is very, very, very personal. Okay. And the story is of a father who tracks down his lost daughter, who was taken by a serial killer who feeds off the cosmic creature or he controls the cosmic creature that feeds off our needs and addictions. And so this story could be at the same time a cosmic Lovecraftian story and Cronenbergian body horror at the same time. That's what this novel is, kind of unintentionally. But when you make it into a movie, it would have all those things. And here's the interesting thing: is it eventually comments also on Hollywood in the studio system. Like John was working on getting The Crow made at the time, which he did. He eventually did. He's one of the credited screenwriters on The Crow. But he was going through the Hollywood thing, and so that bleeds into the novel as well, with some kind of Eyes Wide Shut-ish like Hollywood cult stuff that's really, really interesting. So I would go into the room and pitch this as Requiem for a Dream if young David Cronenberg directed it. Hell, you could hire Brandon Cronenberg, the son of David Cronenberg, to direct this. So Brandon, if you're out there, give John and me a call because I think we could work together and make a really great Wet Bones. We got you. We got you. Yeah, because I mean, and if you've never read Wet Bones, I mean, like, there's a reason why I think it's the best. I've read it 3 times, and some that the stuff that I wrote for the bonus features of the ebook is available on my blog, so you can see more material. I interviewed John about it and got really intense on it. And yeah, I love Wet Bones. It is absolutely the best. So, anyways, let's do some honorable mentions. I thought about Fledgling by Octavia Butler, with her vampire novel. I thought about maybe 4 or so different Robert McCammon novels. I would love to see Stinger. John Shirley actually wrote a screenplay for Stinger, and it's very good. You wouldn't have to change much from that. You could use that screenplay actually. Mine, which Frank Darabont owned the rights to, by Robert McCammon. I would love to see that. You'd have to do that one, period. Swan Song. It's better than The Stand. I know that's a hot take. Lansdale's at the Drive-In, Ceremonies by T.E.D. Klein. These are ones that came really close to getting into my top 10. But if you haven't read any of those are a good place to start too. And anything on this list, I highly recommend reading. But don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and to get more content like this from Postcards from a Dying World, or over at my other podcast, the Dickheads podcast, if you want Philip K. Dick stuff. I mean, Philip K. Dick wrote horror too, by the way. Like, his masterpiece, Three Stigmata of Palmer Eldritch, is every bit as much horror as it is science fiction. So horror fans, like, you should be getting into Philip K. Dick too. But I cover more of the sci-fi history over there. Anyways, I know these videos live forever, so it's not out now, but here's the thing. First, if you want to support my work, I don't have a Patreon. There's links to my books below. I have a Splatterpunk Award nominated novel called Ring of Fire, which is a climate change apocalypse novel. That's and Punk Rock Ghost Story are probably my 2 favorite horror novels that I've written. And then but I have a horror crime novel coming out any day now from Grand Mall Press. Most of you watching this video, it's already out, and it's called Nightmare City, co-written with my Dickheads co-host, Anthony Trevino. So that's Nightmare City by David Agranoff and Anthony Trevino. And I recommend that book for horror fans because we wrote it as kind of the way we wanted it to turn out is The Wire if Clive Barker and Philip K. Dick were on the writing staff. And so it's sci-fi, horror, crime, really weird. And then I have a horror novel coming out in the summer of 2023 from Clash Books that all takes place on the last day of World War II, and that's called The Last Night to Kill Nazis. So keep an eye out for that. Please pre-order that one because that's a big book for me. And you want a horror novel that takes place at the end of the war about killing Nazis, trust me. So yeah, that's my top 10 favorite horror novels. For horror fiction pieces, there's 2 short stories that should be Hollywood productions. So yeah, Hollywood, give me a call. Let's make some work. Let's do it.